Well, welcome to another edition of Christian Answers. My name is Pastor Jeff Short, and today I will be talking about a special on television, a series hosted by Morgan Freeman, the actor, and it's called The Story of God. And what Morgan Freeman is doing is he's going through basically the entire field of philosophy of religion. That's what the field is called in the academic world, the philosophy of religion, and he's asking some of the biggest questions that people have ever asked. He's asking the questions that religion and philosophy ask, and he's going to, he says, go on a journey, on a quest through the whole world to find the answers to these questions. Now, that's the claim, that's the goal. Morgan Freeman says that he's going on is a quest for the truth. He wants to find out what the answers are to the most difficult questions of life. But as we will see, and as you will see if you tune into some of these episodes, Morgan Freeman goes through a very superficial journey around the world. And he asks and he probes on a very superficial level. And what it basically boils down to is he runs from Egypt to Jerusalem to the American Southwest to South America. He runs all around the world and he finds out what different religions believe. And then he takes all of their answers and he says, oh, this one sounds pretty good, and this one sounds pretty good, and this one sounds pretty good. And it's basically a smorgasbord of religion and philosophy. It isn't very helpful at all. In fact, it's more confusing than anything else, especially the approach that he takes. And you have to understand, though, the assumption behind the approach that he's taking. We understand from interviews people have conducted with Morgan Freeman that he doesn't actually accept absolute truth, that he doesn't really believe that there is one way, one truth, that there's one God, that there's one revelation from God. He doesn't really believe that, for example, the God of the Bible is God. And he doesn't believe that Jesus Christ, who died on the cross, really necessarily did die on the cross to save us from sin. And he doesn't necessarily believe any of the revelation of the Bible is valid heavenly revelation from God. He doesn't believe those things. And so he is a skeptic. He is an unbeliever. He is a doubter. He might even be an atheist. And yet, he's going around surveying religions. Why does he do that? Why does he bother to do that? Because you get the understanding that the attitude that he's taking and the angle that he's taking in this so-called quest is kind of a paternalistic angle. It's like, find something that you can feel good about and then follow that. Because it really doesn't matter what you follow, and it doesn't really matter what you believe in the realm of religion. I'm paraphrasing. Because it's all the same anyway, as long as it makes you feel good. That's his approach. And so that's what I mean by what he's doing is not really helpful, and actually it's a lot more confusing. He doesn't honestly take seriously the claims of these different religions and evaluate them and critically look at them and weigh them and really do the research that you would really do in anything that you wanted to get to the bottom of. No, he just goes around and on a superficial level shows some kind of a superficial appreciation for every belief. Now, he really didn't go that far. He didn't take it to the point where every belief, because then he would have gone to a satanic church, satanic temple. Yes, they do have those. In Detroit especially, there was one that was recently built, as odd as that is. He didn't go there and ask them what they believed and showed all kinds of respect to them. But the approach that he's taking, you would think maybe he would, because in his eyes and in the eyes of a lot of secular people today, religion is all the same. All the beliefs are really the same. They don't really take it seriously. They don't take any one of them seriously. It basically comes down to, whatever you feel, whatever, turns you on or whatever appeals to you, we'll go with it. But that is a paternalistic understanding of religion. It's a paternalistic understanding of God. It's a paternalistic understanding of the divine revelation. When you basically say everything out there in the religious world is of equal value and it's all the same, what he really is saying, and what a lot of secular people are saying, is that it's all really basically boils down to psychology and how you feel about yourself and how you feel about others. And we don't really expect to have any real truth coming from religion. That's basically his angle, although he's very polite and he'll listen to like the Hindus along the Ganges River as they go down and supposedly wash in the sacred waters of the Ganges River. And he listens to them and he is polite to them, but in his mind, you can tell by the way he reacts, it's like whatever they want to do is fine with me, because it's not really truth anyway. It's beyond truth. It's some feeling-based thing. That's what his idea of religion is. So when he approaches these topics, you are not going to get a in-depth, realistic, honest look at the question and the answers, and you're not going to get them evaluated. It's all going to be a superficial mishmash, a stew where he puts everything in the pot. The one thing you will get out of it, though, is a subtle attack on Christianity, because as members of the Western world, we have been raised in the Christian worldview. And that has been the faith that has grounded our civilization for at least 2,000 years now. So what he is attempting to do in a subtle way is undermine the predominance of Christianity in the West by bringing in all these other religions like Hinduism and Buddhism and Islam and the Southwest Native American Indian religions and all these other things. He brings them in there and puts them on equal level with Christianity, and even questions the Christian message, and shows how some of these other beliefs seemingly fit better with his own personal preferences. And so you have a subtle attack on the Christian faith in this presentation, although not a direct attack. So he's very careful to not go after Christianity in his secularism, but you can tell by the way he presents this that Christianity does not hold any predominant place in his thinking, even though he goes back to his boyhood and it shows him in church, a reenactment, and he was formed in the Christian faith somewhat, although he says he only went to church a few times a year. And so he doesn't have deep Christian roots, evidently. But he did identify as a Christian when he was a young man and young boy. But he seems to very easily throw that aside when some other belief system appeals to him, be it Buddhism or Hinduism or even Islam, on some different point of doctrine. So it's not a very interesting, I would say it's not a very interesting presentation of these fundamental questions of life. But the first episode tackled the question, what happens when you die? And so what this episode consists of is Morgan Freeman getting on an airplane and flying to places all over the world to see what the different world religions say about death. And he seems to want to make the claim that the afterlife and the belief in life after death as a belief originated possibly in Egypt. And he wants to explain the development of this idea as if through an evolutionary grid, that people began to think more and more about the next life, and then the Egyptians came up with a whole complex religion of the afterlife, and it involves putting all kinds of objects in the tombs of their pharaohs so that these objects would be available for the pharaoh as he goes through his journey into the next life and all these things. Now, Freeman doesn't believe in any of that. As I stated before, you can tell that he's just playing along with this. And I'm not even sure he believes in an afterlife, and I'm not even sure he believes that there's any place the soul goes. I'm not even sure if he believes in the soul. But he's trying to sort of make a survey of all of the world religions, and he tries to say the Hindus believe this, and the Buddhists believe this, and Muslims believe this, and Christians believe this. So it's more like just this, and then then he sort of makes it personal. He's like, I like this understanding of the afterlife, or this appeals to me, or it's all sort of a feeling-based thing. But there's no real evaluation of it. And he never does come right out and say, obviously, all of these different competing beliefs can't be true. He doesn't want to do that because that would alienate people in his audience. And so he's basically trying to say, well, this is what Hindus and Buddhists and Christians and Muslims and Native American Indians and all these different beliefs believe, but, maybe they're all saying the same thing in different words, and et cetera, et cetera. So he's basically trying to show that everybody really believes the same thing, although they can't see past their own specific doctrines, which is not true. It is not true that everybody believes the same thing fundamentally about life and death. Reincarnation is entirely different than resurrection from the dead. Reincarnation, this idea that the Hindus have of when you die, your soul enters into the body of another creature, be it an animal or a human, and lives out the life again in that body, and then dies and enters another body, and so forth and so on. That is totally different and contradictory from the idea that is taught in the Bible, in Christianity, that you die once and then comes the judgment. You stand before the living God. You have to answer to the living God about your life. And as people today, we have to answer to the living God about what we did with Jesus, because Jesus came to solve the problem of sin and death. And if we have not embraced the Savior Jesus Christ, we will have to give an account for that. And we cannot be saved apart from Christ. So we must embrace Jesus. That is a whole lot different than saying, well, you are born and reborn and born and reborn and die and reborn multiple times until your soul is purged. And that is totally a different idea. Well, he doesn't bring out the contrast, and that's the problem. You cannot study philosophy of religion and not compare and contrast the different views and evaluate them. You cannot do that. And that's what he's trying to do. And he's trying to do it because he doesn't want to alienate any audience. He wants everyone to watch the show, and he wants everyone to find fascination and interest in the different beliefs that are out there. And he wants everyone to come to the conclusion that everybody's really grasping and groping to try to find the answers of life. And even if we don't find the answers to life, we have this in common. We're all searching. That's kind of the message at the end of everything. At the end of the episodes is always about the same, is that we may never agree on what the answer to this question is, but at least we can all agree that we're all on that journey and find our common ground in the journey, on the way, in the process, and so on and so forth. But that is not the proper way to approach these subjects. I guess if you're wanting to have a television series and you're wanting to appeal to the most people, that might be the way, but it's so superficial that it's hardly worth the effort. And so that's the first episode, what happens when we die, and unfortunately he doesn't go into it deep enough to really be helpful in any respect. If you want to know what happens when we die, and you want to be able to talk about it and discuss it and in a way that makes sense, you go to the Bible and you look at the person of Jesus Christ, who says he comes from God the Father, that he is going to prepare a place in the life beyond for us, so that when we die, we can go with him and live with him forever with the heavenly citizens in heaven. It's all explained in the Bible. It makes sense. It makes the most sense of any of the other understandings of the afterlife that are in existence. And so we have to go on the basis of God's revelation in his word. Now, the Old Testament reveals a little bit of that, and then the New Testament reveals more of that in Jesus Christ. So we have the complete Bible, the Old and the New, which explains enough of the afterlife for us so that we can get a grasp on it, we can understand it enough, and think about it enough to satisfy us in this temporary life. And we don't have to go searching the world over and run into these crazy and really contradictory notions like reincarnation. Reincarnation is a philosophical concept that has no verifiable proof, no evidence for it. It is a philosophical, religious concept that somebody came up with in India at some point in history many thousands of years ago. And unfortunately, the people there are stuck with it, and they have to live under it until they are liberated from it through the teachings of Christianity and the gospel. So I wish he could have gone into depth and talked more about how we have a real hope that God will raise us up, and that we can put our hope in the one God, the God of the Bible, and believe in him through the Son, Jesus Christ. Now, the second episode deals with the end times. It deals with the apocalypse. And again, that same kind of superficiality pervades the whole episode. What is going to happen in the end times? What will be the end of the world? Well, you guessed it. He goes all over the world and surveys what the world religions say about this. He goes to Islam and see what they say about it. He goes to Buddhism and Hinduism. And he does go to the Jews and the Christians in the Middle East, and finally he does go to the Bible. But again, it's all mixed together with all the other world religions. And so, the Christian answer is just one of many possibilities. And he wants to try to show people in the West that Christianity isn't the only answer out there, people. Actually, he doesn't know it, or maybe he does know it, but he's watering down, he's diluting the true Christian revelation from the Bible, and he's trying to bring in all of these other world religions. And this happens in college campuses every year. Freshmen come into a comparative religion class, and the professor says, "Oh, good, I've got some naive Christian believers here. I'm going to show them that their beliefs are just one of many smorgasbord of beliefs, that all the different world religions and philosophies have an idea about this." And so Christians have this false understanding that theirs is the only one, or theirs is the correct one. Well, I'm going to shatter that by showing them all kinds of different alternative views of the end times. And this will throw them off, and they won't be able to recover their faith, and they'll lose their faith, and won't that be fun? Professors do that. Not all of them, but some professors actually take delight in trying to shatter the faith of Christians, because some Christians never ever think through these issues in depth in their own church. In fact, some churches never, ever talk about the fact that Christianity offers the best solution to things like the end times, the apocalyptic end of the world. Christianity explains in better detail and in more logical sense than any other understanding. Some churches just never get into the fact that there are false doctrines and false beliefs out there, false religions that claim all kinds of things. How do we know Christianity is true? They just never deal with these. They never prepare the people in the churches for challenges to the Christian faith. Because if you look at all of the different end-time beliefs, and you look at them, stack them up, and you start probing beneath the surface, there are contradictions, totally contradictions, between the different world religions. And so you have to realize, either they're all wrong, they can't all be right, or there could be one that's right. And as Christians, we believe the words of Jesus Christ. When he says that he will come again, when Jesus claims that he will come at the end of the age from the clouds, and he will come and conquer for the right and the good and the truth. When he says these words, we believe them. And so as Christians, we have to know our faith, and we have to know the answers from the Bible, and we have to be able to dialogue with other religions and show them why what those false religions teach is wrong. And if our churches aren't equipping us to do that, then they're doing us a great disservice, because just as the freshman college student, when he goes into a world religion class, he shouldn't be thrown off. He shouldn't be shattered when he learns that other faiths teach different doctrine. He should expect it. He should understand that Christianity is a unique revelation from God, is a true revelation from God, and that's the only faith that you can actually talk about, and you can actually see the soundness of the arguments and reasoning behind it. And you can understand and appreciate it better for that sense. And so, again, Morgan Freeman just goes and surveys all the world religions, and then it's more like, well, find one that you like and feel comfortable with. It basically comes down to personal preference, personal feelings, I like this better than that. It just seems to fit my personality. That is not the truth. The truth is what is, not what you feel. So, again, this second episode called The Apocalypse, very lightweight, not so good. The third episode is called Who is God? And again, you guess how he approaches this. He goes all over the place asking the world religions what they think of God. And you're going to get the wide-ranging Hinduism that has millions of gods. God could be a tree, a God could be a stream, God could be many millions of different things. Islam, of course, there's one monotheistic it's called a Unitarian understanding of God. God is beyond imagination. This one Unitarian God. And then, of course, Christianity believes in a Trinitarian understanding of God. The Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. There's a complexity there. There's a unity and complexity. There is a community and a singularity. It's the most sophisticated and complex and fulfilling understanding of God that there ever was, and it's revealed in the Bible. And of course, there was no grappling beneath the surface by Morgan Freeman, because that's not what he does. He doesn't probe deep. Although I have to say that in his understanding and listening to these other world religions, he acts like he's hearing profound things. He acts like he's getting insights. But you can't get insights when you ask a superficial level question and then have a summary that's superficial. So it's kind of almost like a sham It's like he's trying to come across as profound, and it's really very frivolous and petty, the level of superficiality that he's dealing with. So, as you can imagine, then, of course, he brings in science, and that's somewhat interesting. Shows a scientist showing that a brain looks a little different for someone who has faith, and a brain looks different from someone who has no faith or an atheist. I don't understand the argument there. I think it is for someone who holds intensely to a belief. Supposedly there's an area of the brain that looks different than a person that doesn't hold intently to a belief. But again, atheists do have a worldview, and they do believe in science. And science and the human reasoning ability is their God. And so they are religiously committed to that. And they have their own high priests, like the Richard Dawkins of the world, and Stephen Hawking's, and all of these. They are the high priests of the scientific world religion, the secular worldview. So, again, it's such a superficial presentation. I would like to go further and really look into the scientific understanding of what Morgan Freeman was presenting about this area of the brain that, I have heard of some scientists say that there's a God particle in the brain. And people with this little God particle, they believe. And people without that don't believe, and so forth. These are all superficial analysis. There is no common proof that one can look at a brain and say, oh, this person believes in God, and this person doesn't believe in God. Or this person believes in the Christian God, and that person believes in the Buddhist God. You can't look at the brain and tell that. And I think you're only going to find out there might be a pattern of brain activity for a person who is praying and a person who's not praying, a person reading the Bible and not reading the Bible. But what does that prove? Again, it's very inconclusive. So we have an attempt by Morgan Freeman to ask the most profound questions of life, but he utterly fails in taking this seriously because he doesn't go below the surface. Now, there was an live interview TV show with an audience in the UK called The Big Questions. And they actually did ask these same questions, and they had a panel of guests, and they actually did go a little deeper into these topics. But of course, Morgan Freeman is trying to make a wide appeal presentation and have a popular series, and it's a documentary too. And the graphics are nice, the production is nice, but I'm afraid that it was written in a very 8th grade, 7th grade, 6th grade level. And it isn't really helpful, sadly enough. So I'm going to watch the next episode, which is part 4. And if there's anything interesting, I will report that to you. But so far, it's been a very boring and not much worthwhile presentation of religion. Well, I hope that's been helpful to you. And we'll see you back here next week on another edition of Christian Answers. This is Jeff Short. God bless.